Hey guys, this is Synik25 here, bringing you a deck profile on a Constellar-Evilswarm deck, which is, I know these two archetypes typically don't usually go well together, but I thought I'd give it a shot to see if I can make something work with it, and it ended up bringing me some pretty interesting results. There's been times where it worked, there's times where it hasn't. There's also been times where I felt like it plays like two different decks instead of one integrated one, which can be interesting, but it obviously has its limitations. Don't expect this deck to be topping any YCSs anytime soon, but I thought it'd be an interesting mix to try out nevertheless. So let's get right into it. I'm running one BLS because in any light and dark deck, if you don't have BLS, you're doing it wrong. So BLS is in here at one. I'm also running Doom Caliber Knight to give me more control, so I can stop effects, and it's just generally useful. It's a 1900 beater at the very least, and another dark monster. I'm also running, in terms of Constellars, Constellar Cost, which is obviously one of the best Constellars in the entire archetype. I used to have him at 3, but now I'm only running him at 2 to make room for other Constellars, obviously. Since it's not a pure Constellar deck, I have to make some cuts. And I ended up only running him at 2 along with the other Constellars. I am, however, running 3 casters, as well as 3 Mandragos as the central Evilswarm engine. It works pretty well. I can swarm the field pretty easily, just like any usual standard Evilswarm deck can, with some restrictions, obviously. I'm running 2 Pollux, because Pollux are great. They get out more Constellars. I'm running 2 Carapion, in terms of like the Monster Reborn engine, essentially, of the Evilswarm deck, as well as 2 Sombre for the Monster Reborn engine of the Constellar deck. Finally, running 2 Gredi for the last of the Constellars. Just, again, helps me get out more of the monsters, as well as 1 Honest, since I'm running a lot of lights in here. As for the spells, I'm running 1 Reinforcement of the Army to essentially search out either my casters or my Pollux, depending on what I need in my hand. Running Mind Control as a tech, Dark Hole, 3 MSTs because this deck really hates back rows. It also hates when the XYZs are destroyed. So I built a lot of the deck around trying to maintain those XYZ plays. 1 Book of Moon, because Book of Moon is great. Only 1 Infestation Pandemic Infection. I've ran 2 a couple times. I feel like it gets a little bit clunky. And honestly, the deck doesn't really need it too much, because between all the protection I have, also Constellar Omega, which can prevent spells and traps from affecting the monsters, it ends up just being a little clunky at 2. So I'm only running 1. I'm running 2 XYZ Reborn, which is really crucial in this deck, because again, like I said, the deck runs all of its XYZs indefinitely, and whenever they get destroyed, it ends up just being a bad time on my case. So I figure XYZ Reborn was a pretty good card to put into the deck, at least a 2. As for traps, running the 3 stable traps of Bottomless Trap Hole, Torrential Tribute, and the Compulsory Evacuation Device. Torrential, in its own right, works really well in the deck when combined with Infestation Pandemic Virus of the Evilswarm engine, as well as Constellar Omega for the Constellar engine, because I can prevent my monsters from getting destroyed. I'm also running 2 Safe Zone. I know a lot of Evilswarm decks like to run it, and I think it works pretty well in this deck, not only for Ophion, but also for Constellar Ptolemy M7, because once I XZ for M7, I like to keep it on the field so I can keep abusing its effect. So Safe Zone gives me an opportunity to do that if I so please with the Constellar side. I'm running 2 Fiendish Chain because effects hurt. Also 2 XYZ Reflect to protect my XYZ monsters, again, from any trap, effect, or spell card that tries to target my monster. And it ends up really saving me a lot. And the 800 damage that you inflict to your opponent is just the icing on the cake. Finally, I'm running 1 Solemn Warning because it's just good and it gives me more protection. So all in all, I'm running a lot of protection in this deck with the intent of protecting my XYZ monsters so I can continue to make plays and also go through the whole Constellar Ptolemy M7 loop of continuing to reborn monsters from my grave. So this is the main deck. As for the extra deck, like I said before, I'm running 1 Ptolemy M7. It's just a great card. It keeps recycling cards so it can essentially act as a compulsory evacuation device for my opponent's monsters. Only running 1 Pallades in this deck. If this was a pure Constellar deck, I would obviously run more than 1. But I don't get as many options to get up Pallades as I'd like. And usually I end up going for a Mega anyway, just to protect my Constellars and just keep the field presence. But occasionally I do go for Pallades. It's also kind of hard to get him out occasionally because I am only running 2 cost. If I was running 3, I could probably get him out more. But I kind of like the build I have. It's pretty solid with 8 and 8 for Constellar and Evilswarm respectively. So I don't want to tap into that. I'm running Evilswarm Ouroboros as my rank 4, which requires 3 level 4 monsters. And I can get this guy out fairly often, actually, because both Evilswarms and Constellars have an amazing ability to really swarm the field. So there's been many times where I've had the opportunity to get out Ouroboros and either compulse something on the field, and if it survives long enough, start discarding their hand. So it works pretty well. Only one Ophion. I usually don't need more than one, and there's a lot of decks that just don't really care about Ophion, so I'd rather have another spot dedicated to something else. And between the XYZ Reborns I have in the deck and all the protection I have, I typically never need more than one Ophion to begin with. Utopia is a generic 4. I'm also running Master Key Beetle, which again I know is relatively stable in Evilswarm decks, and it certainly works well here as well. But it also works fairly well at Constellars as well. Again, I like to protect Ptolemy M7 as much as I can, so anything I can combo to keep either M7 and Ophion on the field longer is always a good thing. As terms of the other Constellars I run, only running 1 Beehive for the extra power, and 2 Omega. This is the general Constellar I usually go to. It's just nice to have that protection, particularly early game. So Omega's the play I like to make early when I know my opponent still has a lot of cards in hand and has the potential to either Dark Hole me or just in general have a spell or trap that can destroy my other cards. So Omega is a pretty solid card. In terms of another Evilswarm, I'm running Bahamut, which is essentially a mind control. I do get him out occasionally. I typically try to go for Ophion first, but if I know I'm playing against a deck that doesn't really care about Ophion, I'll try to make Bahamut instead and threaten him with a change of heart. I'm running Radiant Photon Paladynamo, which works really well with 2 lights, can negate a monster's effect, and when it's sent to the graveyard I can draw 1 card, which is great because this deck does have a problem with using its resources, and I tend to run out of card value really quickly in my hand. So any card that allows me to give me a little bit more draw power is very welcome. Also running Gaga Cowboy, and also Evilswarm Nightmare as an alternative Evilswarm play to go to in case the deck I'm playing against doesn't care about Ophion. Now, in terms of my 3s, I'm running Leviar the Sea Dragon and Wind Up Zenmanes. Wind Up Zenmanes is just a generic play I go through. It works fairly well. But I'm also running Leviair. So I have Sombre and Karakion here, which banish monsters from the grave. And if I know I have a few monsters that are banished, I sometimes go for Leviair and can get it out that way. I was running Tour Guide in this deck, and I might actually put Tour Guide back. I think it might run better than, let's say, Doom Caliber Knight. But I figured for this build, I want to have as much protection as possible, and it's so far working a little bit better than Tour Guide. But I would say the general value between the Doom Caliber or Tour Guide is roughly the same. So yeah, that's it for the extra deck. This is not a real side deck. These are just other cards I've considered putting in. Probably should put Tour Guide back because Tour Guide did work pretty well occasionally. But yeah, I've tried Chaos Sorcerer, I've tried Cyber Dragon, I've tried Thunder King Ryo, I've tried Tour Guide, I've also tried Dark Arm, but it didn't work out because I ended up usually having more darks in my grade than I needed. There's just some other generic XYZs. I wanted to fit Thunder Charger in there, but didn't end up having that much room, and usually just M7 is sufficient enough. Wind Up Arsenal Zemayo was helpful at one point, but can't fit it in. Again, I had the extra Palladius here occasionally, and just some other level 4s which require 3 monsters, which have worked, but end up just taking up space. So yeah, this is my Constellar-Evilswarm deck. Again, it's a little bit clunky, it burns through its resources pretty quickly, and occasionally you feel like you're running 2 different decks, but your opponent won't expect what you're playing, and sometimes you can get away with a lot of shenanigans. Especially with all the protection you have. If you could just get out Ophion and then you go for the Constellar play, you go for Pallades, and it's just they have a hard time coming back between an Ophion and Pallades, and even an Ophion and an Omega, they just can't get around it. So the deck can pull off some pretty cool plays, especially when you get BLS out, it's just really dirty. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this build of Constellar-Evilswarm. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. See ya.